everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. I have recently been putting together these strips of half square triangles. This is for another project that I'm going to be showing you shortly, not in this video, that I'm very excited about. But I thought I would show you how to make these strips of half square triangles. So I took this fabric here and I thought that maybe we would make a little border around it with half square triangles. So I thought maybe we would do this blue polka dot fabric and this kind of mustard wildflower fabric and make some half square triangles to add a little border around this pretty little piece here. So you can use these half square triangle strips in all kinds of ways. You can use them as borders around an entire quilt. You can use them as sashing in between your blocks. You can use them within your blocks to kind of add an extra interesting touch. Now I need to cut these strips into squares. Let's do it. So what I've done is I've lined my strip, the top of my strip, up against one of the yellow lines of my cutting mat here. When I cut, it will be perfectly 90 degrees. Then I'm gonna go over 2.5 inches, which is right here, and cut. I'll go over another 2.5 inches and cut. Keep going all along your strip, just like that. Now I have a stack of my blue and a stack of my yellow. I'm gonna take a blue and put it right side up and a yellow right side down, so they're facing each other. You want your lighter colored fabric on top because you're gonna make a pencil mark and you wanna be able to see your pencil mark. I'm gonna line my ruler up from one corner to the other corner and make a line. I'll do this with all pairs. I have all of my pairs matched up right next to me here. I'm gonna take one, I've already put one through, and I'm gonna chain the rest of these all together, one after the other. I'm gonna sew 1/4 inch to the left of my line. Then take my next one, and again, sew 1/4 inch to the left of my pencil line. Keep going until all of your squares are sewn together. I've sewn all of my squares together, and now I'm gonna cut this big chain off, spin it around, and sew 1/4 inch to the other side. Now, cut this off your machine. Once you've sewn 1/4 inch on both sides of your line, you're gonna cut all of your squares apart. Now you are gonna cut right along the line. You don't need to use a rotary cutter and a ruler for this. You're just cutting along your pencil line. You can use scissors if that makes you happier. I find the rotary cutter and scissors to be the best way. Now, I could go and get my longer ruler, which would probably be a good idea, because what you could do then is you could line a couple of these up in a row and then put your ruler on and then just cut both of them together. But mine's not long enough to do that. So you can go do that and save yourself lots of time. I'm going to just do it this way and complain about how long it takes. Then take these to your ironing board and iron all of these open. And now you have a bunch of squares. These are gonna be cute. In a perfect world, your new squares here would be perfectly square. However, that is never the case. So we need to square these up. And the way that you do that, take your smallest ruler, you'll notice this diagonal line. You want to match this diagonal line up with this diagonal line. So this line should be pointing up towards the right. I'm gonna put my ruler on top so that the lines are on top of, the diagonal lines are on top of each other. And then I'm gonna trim off any excess. Spin your block over, spin your square over. So now the other side is up, but the diagonal line is still going the same way, and do the same thing to the other side. This should now be a perfect square. Repeat all of them. I did want to mention that in cutting these down, I'm not cutting them to be a specific size. I'm just trimming the edges, trying to keep them as big as possible, but still squared off. So I've done all of these. Next, what we're going to do is you're going to pair them up. So let's see. So let's pretend that these are all along the border. And you will flip them right sides together and sew along the right-hand side, 1/4 inch. Flip it, sew 1/4 inch. So it will be the same with all of these. All of these will get a pair. And again, you just flip it over and sew 1/4 inch. You know I will chain piece these because that is the fastest way. The other thing is make sure to leave 4 of them single without sewing them to a pair. And that's because I don't know exactly how many are going to go in each row around the center piece. And so if it's an odd number and all of your pieces are sewn into doubles, then you're going to have to seam rip a couple apart. So leave 4, 1 for each side, and those may get sewn together and they may not. We'll find out. When I'm sewing a bunch together, when I'm chain piecing a bunch together and pairing them up, what I like to do is put a little clip on the side that I'm going to be sewing. And that way, if in between, you know, here and the sewing machine, something gets turned or whatever, you won't be like, oh gosh, what side am I supposed to be sewing on? You know that you'll be sewing right here. So I do that on all mine. I put a little clip and then I'll know. This is looking pretty cute. So the next step is going to be to pair my pairs up. So I would sew this one to this one and this one to this one. And once these are, you know, all the way around, and then once these are sewn open, you know, add on this pair. Now I do think I'm going to need an extra one, and I'll tell you why. So you want to get all the way from this corner to this corner. So if I line up the corners, but then you need to account for the seam allowance. I'll put that over to kind of pretend for the seam allowance, and then that over, you'll notice there's a gap here. So I am going to need to have an extra one, which means it's going over the edge and I'll need to cut it off like this. That does not bother me. Some people would perhaps measure everything beforehand to make sure that all of these pieces were exactly the right size. To me, that takes all 100% of the joy out of sewing. I would hate that. So this doesn't bother me at all. That'll be totally fine. And then we'll just put a little cornerstone right here, and everything will look perfect when it's done. I'm gonna have a strip for each side, so I'll end up with 4 strips and then 4 cornerstones. I've attached the top and the bottom onto my block here, and this is looking pretty good. I'm really happy with it. And then I attached these cornerstones onto each one of my sides. And for the cornerstones, I just did these nice little birds, which are obviously from the same fabric as the block. So I will attach these on by folding these right sides together. So 1/4 inch seam right across there. I'll do the same to the other side. And just to finish this block off, I'm going to do a little border in this kind of bluish gray polka dot fabric. I'm done with the quilt block. As always, I will show some pictures at the end so you can get a close-up look. I added the border. I made the border well larger than this quilt block really calls for. This is a pretty large border for this quilt block, but I figure I don't know what I'm pairing this with yet, what project this will be in, so I wanted to give myself some more space and I can always trim it down. I'm pretty happy with it. As you can see, some of the triangles came out better than others. Let's see if I can find one where the tip is cut off. Some of the tips of the triangles are cut off, like right here. You can see that one got cut off. But then other ones are pretty good. Let's see if I can find one that isn't bad. This one, right? That one's pretty good. That got the tip right there. So how do you fix that? It just takes practice. I guarantee you there's a gazillion little tricks people will tell you about how not to cut the tips off of your triangles and things like that. But the bottom line is you just have to sew a gazillion triangles and then you'll never cut a tip off ever again. So that's the trick. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye.